All right, and continuing our GIF animation assignment 3, this is a time-based project where our final product is going to be where we're controlling the timing. But we will also find the 9 best frames from that animation and make what's called a refined storyboard so that it can be part of our print portfolio. Now, looking at this example, this is an artist who professionally makes the print image and then personally makes animations that tell the same story. And they'll each showcase the transformation differently. What happens is, once you have 9 panels that tell your story, when you animate those like this, they can look really just choppy and not clear enough, right? So you add in-betweens. And the slang for that is tween. You add tween frames to kind of smooth it out. So where it took only 3 frames here to show that the bird is flapping its wings, here it takes about 10 frames, right? But time-based means that you control how long each of those frames are. Like, what fraction of the second are you doing it? So if we're using all freeware, we would use Photopea to build our individual frames. And then we would use this program called gifmaker.me. Where is it? There it is. Or, sorry, not gifmaker.me, easygif.com maker, in order to set the timing on each of those frames, right? It's a little bit awkward, and that's because Photopea doesn't have really user-friendly animation script tools. It has it through a coding language for layers, and that's a little difficult. Unfortunately, Photopea is not working again, so we're going to be doing this through Photoshop, which does have those tools, because we need a reliable tool. But because we're using Photoshop and you don't have access to Photoshop at home unless you have your own license, then that means we need to use this class time even more effectively. Yeah, Photopea is unresponsive. So this is what we're going to do. We are going to build it in 2 files in Photoshop. And using the morning class as an example, this is where we want to get by the end of the day. We want to have our sketch, and we want to post that to Canvas. Then using that sketch, we'll know what kind of assets we need to build, both for setting and character. If those assets are already built, like I'm using my landscape and my creature from the morning class, then we put them into an assets file. And this is my Photoshop file for my assets, just so I can show you how it works. So I took that landscape project, that assignment 1, and then I clean it up by reducing it to just like the stage props. So this is my backdrop, which was originally made of like 7 different layers, but now is all merged into just 1 layer. And then in front of that comes the stage where my character will stand. And then in front of that are the things that will change, like the water shimmering, looking like it's moving, or the tree that's planted, or the ground that the tree is planted in, or the fog that will come in and out, and the rocks at the edge of the stage at the foreground. And I have a little bird character that's going to walk across this bridge, right? Now, I haven't brought in my main character, which is a big version of that character that's going to come and pull the tree out of the ground and eat it and then start eating the landscape. So this is what's called cleaning up your assets. Then, once you have your scene set, so let's say this is the first panel of my story, establishing this setting with the tree planted, then you create a second file in Photoshop, and that is called the stage file. And this stage file is the exact same size. It's going to be 8 by 8 inches by 300 pixels per inch. But this is where the assets file is where you build your frame. The stage file is where you put your finished shots, all combined. So right now in the morning class, I only have 2 frames of animation. I have the setting, and then I have some fog rising in the setting, right? But I build all of that in the assets and then move them over. So what is the metaphor for this? The metaphor for this is claymation. And the claymation I like to refer to is Wallace and Gromit. So Wallace and Gromit is all done of these plasticine clay characters in real settings. It's all built by hand by different artists. And then with this regular camera, they shoot a frame of animation. First they storyboard it so they know what to build. Then they run like a little hand-drawn animatic so they know what their shots will be. And then they have to build everything by hand. The sets, the props, the characters. Even all the expressions of the characters. Right? And then when they put it all together, each time they change a movement, they take a new picture. And then they string all those pictures together and decide how long you're going to look at each of those pictures. That is how claymation works. So that just a simple shot like this takes something like 50 different photographs with just little movements made. So we're going to imitate that. This is a list of those steps, right? You first storyboard, we're doing that now. Then we have to create our characters and our sets and our props. That's what's called asset creation. You have a head start because at least one of your assets is already created because you're using it from something that you've made before. Once you have your assets built, then you can set the stage. You can put them where you want them in a frame. And then we shoot the scene by merging it all together into one layer and then moving that one layer onto our stage. And then we do it all over again for the next shot and the next shot and the next shot. So I need to start with storyboarding, which means I need to pick for this afternoon class of my projects I've done so far, what am I going to use to start? And I'm going to use my exercise number 2 because I liked my little skull with the coin on its mouth emoji. So how do I start this? Well, I know I want that PNG, right? Just like if you use your creature, you're going to want your clean PNG from assignment 2. So I'm going to hold down Option and drag it onto the desktop to get a copy of it. And then I'm going to make a folder for assignment 3. And I'm going to mark it yellow because I'm working on this. And then I'm going to bring that in as one asset that I already have. I have a character asset. And now I could search anywhere for other assets. I can choose a setting. I could use my Mount Olympus landscape if I wanted. I could use my creature if I wanted, or I could find other things. I'm going to actually go to my morning class and remind myself of what my emoji was for the morning class. And it was this. Nope, that's the Emoji Maker one. Where is it? It was this. It was a fox for Aesop's Fables, right? So would it make sense to make my fox turn into the skull? No, not really. But what I can do is find another asset that might make sense for that. So I'm going to go to Pixabay. And even though this isn't photographic, I can look for vectors or illustrations, right? And I'm going to look for, let's see, a Zeus image. So I want a Zeus illustration. And since all of these are AI and look like it, I'm going to say content type authentic only. And sometimes people still use AI and then don't actually use the coding right. But what I'm looking is for kind of a silly image of Zeus. So this one has promise. This one's in a fun 8-bit style, but that's a little distracting. And so instead of having to build a Zeus out of my own shapes, I think I can use an aspect of this. And because it's Pixabay, when I download it, it's going to be quite high resolution. All right. So now I have some inspiration. And I can start my sketching. So where do I put that? I'm going to put it into my assignment 3 folder. And I'm thinking this is something to do with my transformation. From this into this. And what I want to show is that even gods die. Ooh. But in a comedic way. So, let me sketch it out. I recommend you just use pencil and paper, but not lined paper, please. I'm going to open up Photoshop. I'm going to sketch it digitally just so it's all here. I'm going to say new. I'm just going to take a really basic layout. Let's do 11 by 14 by 300. And then I'm just going to use my brush tool, and you are allowed to use your brush and create pixels for this as you build assets. And I'm just going to draw at 100% opacity 3 squares on top of, or 3 rows of 3 squares, all stacked on top of each other, with space in between. That's the gutter. That is a storyboard template. Storyboards are different than comic books in that the aspect ratio of the frame is always the same. So if I'm doing an animation for Instagram, for instance, Instagram used to only support square formats. So this would be the locked aspect ratio. This is kind of an old TV standard aspect ratio. Now I'm going to make a new layer on top of it. And I'm going to take my opacity down a little bit on my brush. And I'm going to start. So I know I want to start with Zeus. So I'm going to just go right for introducing the character of Zeus. He's got this big beard. And I'm going to have a lightning bolt behind him. I still need to build that because I don't want to have the whole body. Okay, so how do I mark this? The character is Zeus. I'm going to INT, introduce Zeus. And I'll build that from this and maybe a few other things I find. Okay, next, I want the, actually, I'm thinking on the fly here. I won't introduce the lightning bolt right away. I'm just going to keep it simple, but showcase the transformation. The transformation I want is happening near the middle, and I want the lightning to hit this Zeus silhouette and for it to reveal a skull. You know how in cartoons, how things get hit by lightning or electricity, and it shows the skeleton, right? So what is the action here? It is electrocution by lightning. Okay, so how do I build up to that moment? Because it would be pretty shocking if I just go from this to this. That wouldn't feel like there was much transition. And then I'm going to end with the skull with the tongue with the coin, right? Because that's the Greek mythology afterlife. So what I'm going to do is have the head, but I'm going to have little lightning strikes happen around the edges. So lightning. And then it's going to happen again, but over here this time. And so now I know I need certain assets. I need a Zeus head. I need lightning bolts. And then it's not going to happen. And maybe the expression on Zeus's face changes a little bit. Like kind of wondering what's going to happen next. And then this is the big moment, right? Big change. Change of state. Then we have the consequences of it. So then we have this smoldering Zeus